Hey guys, I'm gonna do a video today and look at the animals that we see in these prophetic passages in the book of Isaiah and Isaiah 11, Isaiah 65 concerning the millennial kingdom. Are these animals that we see in these passages within the millennial kingdom, are they discussing real animals, or are these animals symbolic for something else? So let's look at it, and this is going to be an in-depth study. We're going to use the books of Daniel. We're going to look at the book of Revelation to determine what Isaiah is speaking about. And again, this comes on the heels or toes, no pun intended, of previous videos of Nebuchadnezzar's image and the head of gold to the legs of iron. Everybody's in agreement of who those represent, those body parts, what kingdoms they represent from Babylon to the Roman Empire. It's only at the feet where there's a lot of division on what this means. In Daniel 2:41, and whereas thou sawest the feet and toes, part of potter's clay and part of iron, the kingdom shall be divided. And as I mentioned ad nauseum probably by now on previous videos, that the feet of iron and miry clay or potter's clay represent the Roman Empire, the continuation of the legs of iron into the feet, and the house of Israel. And we see that throughout the Bible, a lot of Old Testament passages speaking of the house of Israel as potter's clay. Now, John represents the same two groups, the Roman Empire as the beast and the house of Israel, unrepentant Israel, or Judah, as the harlot. Together, they ruled prior to the second coming of Jesus Christ in Jerusalem. And that is Mystery Babylon, Jerusalem. At the second coming of Jesus Christ, the feet of iron and miry clay, the house of Israel, and the Roman Empire were judged, and those kingdoms came toppling down. Now let's go to another vision in the book of Daniel. This is not a dream of Nebuchadnezzar's, but actual vision of Daniel's. And then we see this in Daniel 7. And this dream is showing a different way of speaking of the same kingdoms that Nebuchadnezzar saw in his dream. In Daniel 7, these visions of the Babylonian Empire, the Medes and Persian Empire, the Greek Empire, and the Roman Empire are represented by these four beasts: the lion, the bear, the leopard, and the terrible beast with 7 heads and 10 horns. And we talked about these 10 horns on a previous video that we see in Daniel 7 and Daniel 8. And out of these 10 horns came the little horn, which was the beast of the Roman Empire. And so let's read this, and this will allow us to begin to see what Isaiah was showing a little while before Daniel concerning these beasts or animals. And so in Daniel 7:8, it says, I considered the horns, and behold, there came up among them another little horn, before whom there were 3 of the first horns plucked up by the roots. And behold, in this horn were eyes like the eyes of man, and a mouth speaking great things. And then going to verse 11, I beheld them because of the voice of the great words which the horn spoke. I beheld even till the beast was slain. As concerning the rest of the beasts, they had their dominion taken away, yet their lives were prolonged for a season and a time. So, in Daniel's dream, we have judgment of the fourth beast. This was the Roman Empire. And the beast, the little horn within the Roman Empire, was slain. And we see this in the book of Revelation, where the beast and false prophet were cast into the lake of fire at the conclusion of this judgment, after the trumpet and vial judgments were brought about in the wrath of God at the second coming of Jesus Christ. But these other 3 animals, as it states in Daniel 7:12, continued. Their dominion was taken away, but they continued. Their lives were prolonged for a season and a time. So we have a lion, a bear, a leopard, whose lives were continued. And so let's now look at Isaiah 11, verse 6 and 7. And we're going to see some of these same animals that we see in Daniel's vision. So I'll read Isaiah 11:6-7. The wolf also shall dwell with the lamb, and the leopard shall lie down with the kid, and the calf and the young lion and the fatling together, and a little child shall lead them. And the cow and the bear shall feed. Their young ones shall lie down together, and the lion shall eat straw like the ox. So Isaiah is describing what is occurring at the initiation of the millennial kingdom after the second coming of Jesus Christ, a literal 1,000 years. And it continues in Isaiah 11:8. And the suckling child shall play on the hole of the asp, and the weaned child shall put his hand on the cockatrice den. The asp, the cockatrice, the serpent. Why was the child putting his hand on the hole of the asp and the cockatrice den? Well, it's because at that time, Isaiah is showing that during the millennial kingdom, the serpent was cast into the bottomless pit and was bound for that 1,000 years. As we see in Revelation 20, verse 3, speaking of the serpent, the devil, Satan, and cast him into the bottomless pit and shut him up and set a seal upon him, that he should deceive the nations no more till the 1,000 years should be fulfilled. And after that, he must be loose a little season. And that is why that it reads, continuing in Isaiah 11:9, they shall not hurt nor destroy in all my holy mountain, for the earth shall be full of the knowledge of the Lord as the waters cover the sea. The reason that the serpent wasn't in his den or coming up out of the hole is because he was cast in the bottomless pit and bound. This is all symbolic language. And we read in Zechariah 13:1-2, another reason why there was peace during the millennial kingdom and none of these animals destroyed or hurt that holy mountain, Mount Zion, during the millennial kingdom. And we see this prophecy in Zechariah 13:1-2. In that day there shall be a fountain open to the house of David and to the inhabitants of Jerusalem for sin and for uncleanness. And it shall come to pass in that day, saith the Lord of hosts, that I will cut off the names of the idols out of the land, and they shall no more be remembered. And also I will cause the prophets and the unclean spirit to pass out of the land. So the unclean spirits that we see in the Bible during the times of Jesus, all the unclean spirits that Jesus was casting out and that his disciples were casting out, at the time after the judgment, his second coming, and the initiation of the millennial kingdom, Satan was cast into the bottomless pit, but also the evil spirit was also bound. These demons, these devils, were bound. And we continue with this symbology of the mountain. And the stone that struck the image became a great mountain. The stone being Jesus Christ, striking the image of Nebuchadnezzar's dream on the feet of iron and miry clay, and destroyed the image, and the stone, Jesus Christ, became a great mountain and filled the whole earth. This is a prophecy of the millennial kingdom of Christ, the 1,000-year literal reign of Christ that we see 6 times in Revelation 20. So continuing in Isaiah 65:25, it speaks again of millennial kingdom time frame and says, the wolf and the lamb shall feed together, and the lion shall eat straw like the bullock, and dust shall be the serpent's meat. They shall not hurt nor destroy in all my holy mountain, saith the Lord. So these animals, the terrible beast, the Roman Empire, was judged and destroyed, and the little horn and the false prophet were cast into the lake of fire. Satan, the serpent, was bound at that time for 1,000 years in the bottomless pit. And these animals, the lion, the bear, the leopard, their dominion was taken away, but their lives were prolonged for this time and season. And so that's why we see the wolf and the lamb described in Isaiah 11 and Isaiah 65. This is describing the millennial kingdom and the time of peace within these different groups. Now, let's see exactly who these groups of people are now that we understand that they are not literal animals of the millennial kingdom, but groups of people, societies, cultures, religions that came forth through into the millennial kingdom after the Roman Empire was judged at the second coming of Jesus Christ. So remember the Zechariah 13, 1 and 2 verse that the evil spirit was not in the land anymore. We see evil spirits, though, prior to this judgment in Revelation 16. These evil spirits were also judged at that time. And we see in Revelation 16, verses 13 and 14, and I saw 3 unclean spirits like frogs coming out of the mouth of the dragon, out of the mouth of the beast, and out of the mouth of the false prophet. For they are spirits of demons performing signs which go out to the kings of the earth and of the whole world to gather them to the battle of that great day of God Almighty. This is speaking of the battle of Armageddon that, according to Little Season eschatology, has occurred in the past at the second coming of Jesus Christ. And John, who wrote the book of Revelation, also wrote 1 John and was warning of these spirits that he was describing in Revelation 16. Use the symbology of coming out of the mouth of the dragon, the beast, the false prophet as frogs. In 1 John 2:18, it reads, Little children, it is the last time. And as ye have heard that Antichrist shall come, even now there are many antichrists, whereby we know that it is the last time. And in 1 John 2, verses 22 and 23, who is a liar but he that denieth that Jesus is the Christ? He is Antichrist that denieth the Father and the Son. Whosoever denieth the Son, the same hath not the Father, but he that acknowledgeth the Son hath the Father also. So John is speaking of this Antichrist spirit, and John actually is the only person that speaks of an Antichrist. And it's not in the book of Revelation, it's in the book of 1 John. But he is describing things that were coming to that generation, the last time. These were the days that must shortly come to pass. The time was at hand. So let's look at these 3 unclean spirits like frogs now. And this is all going to tie in to these animals that we see that their lives were prolonged and they came from the judgment of the Roman Empire into the millennial kingdom. And I think this first frog that came out of the false prophet was Islam. I think it was the wolf. I think Islam was the wolf that we see in Isaiah's vision, in Isaiah's prophecy concerning the millennial kingdom. Now, our history books will tell you that Islam originated in the 7th century, and Muhammad was said to be a prophet of God around 610 AD, and that Islam began in Muhammad's birthplace in Mecca in Saudi Arabia. But as we have looked at over the past couple of years, the changing of times and laws that we see in Daniel 7:25, we see this prophecy being fulfilled. And not only biblical researchers and truth seekers like ourselves, but secular historians such as Anatoly Fomenko, Herbert Elig, and here Gunnar Heinzen has shown that our timeline has been manipulated and that time has been added to our chronology. Gunnar Heinzen shows in several research presentations that up to 700 years could have been added to our calendar. So if that's the case, then Muhammad may not have been born in the 7th century and began Islam at that time, but it could have been 700 years prior and coming into the timeline of Jesus Christ. So, who are the real Pharisees? Well, I think we get a clue about this possible manipulation of timeline, and that the Pharisees could have been the originator of Islam, as we see in Matthew 7:15, beware false prophets, which come to you in sheep's clothing, but inwardly they are ravening wolves. This is the words of Jesus, speaking of false prophets. And I think Jesus possibly could have foretold of Muhammad directly within the Bible at the Olivet Discourse, speaking of these end times events that were to occur on that generation that Jesus was speaking to. In Matthew 24, verses 24 and 25, for there shall arise false Christs and false prophets, and shall show great signs and wonders, insomuch that if it were possible, they shall deceive the very elect. Behold, I have told you before. Wherefore, if they shall say unto you, behold, he is in the desert, speaking of false prophets, go not forth. Behold, he is in the secret chambers. Again, describing false prophets. Believe it not. So, whose birthplace was in Mecca, Saudi Arabia? Who was nursed in the desert? Who was often described as meditating in the caves in and around Mecca, the secret chambers within the caves? And could Muhammad be representative of the false prophet that John is describing in the book of Revelation, where he describes him as a lamb with 2 horns that speaks like a serpent? Could the 2 horns be the scribes and Pharisees, or the Pharisees and Sadducees? So, looking at Isaiah's animals and seeing the wolf and the lamb lying together, again, these unclean spirits were at the time prior to the second coming of Jesus Christ and the judgment, and Satan being bound, and these evil spirits also being bound. During the time of the millennial kingdom, the wolf and the lamb dwelt together. There was not hostility between these people groups, between these cultures. That Antichrist spirit was not there at that time. So now that we see possibly who the first of the 3 Antichrist spirits that John was writing about in Revelation 16, let's look at the second. And I think, again, a very good case could be made that the second Antichrist spirit originated all the way from Babylon, was the Holy Roman Empire, this 1,000-year reign that we see in our history books. Could this be Roman Catholicism that came out of the Roman Empire and went into the millennial kingdom? Could this be the lion that Isaiah is speaking of when he prophesies of these animals within the passages in Isaiah 11 and Isaiah 65, where we see the lion mentioned many times? And so Roman Catholicism is, at the root, is a Babylonian religion. Why is the Pope's hat shaped like a fish, this slide says? Well, I think it's because it's derived from Babylonian god worship, including Dagon, the fish god that we see in the Bible. And the beast or little horn, the Antichrist that was judged at the second coming of Jesus Christ. Many that look at this as already happened in our past, which includes little season eschatology. Some speculate that it may have been Nero, Caesar Nero. But I think Caesar Nero, if he was the beast, if he was the little horn that was judged at that time, that he was just as likely to be a religious figure as he was a presidential or military figure. I think that this is more of what Caesar might have looked like, this pope like figure, and that this religion continued. The lion, its dominion was taken away, but its life was continued for a season and a time. I think this could have been the Catholic Church in the Middle Ages. And I think that's why we see a lot of middle age, quote, middle age, um, or dark ages, any literature we see as a pope being an antichrist figure. I think this goes back to the Caesar, the beast that was judged, that was this pope figure. And as the Catholic Church continued into the millennial kingdom, this antichrist spirit was taken away. It was very weak. It was not the prominent church as it claims it was in the Dark Ages. The Dark Ages was the age of light. It was the time of the millennial kingdom of Christ. But I think that that is why we do see a lot of uh, a lot of evidence of the Pope being an antichrist figure going back into this time, because during the millennial kingdom, this Roman Catholicism, even though the Antichrist spirit was taken away, was still remembered prior to that judgment at the second coming of Jesus Christ as the religion that had the Pope figure, the beast, the Antichrist, that was judged and thrown into the lake of fire with the false prophet. So the Catholic Church will tell you that it's the one true church and that it's the oldest church. And it was the most powerful church, dating back hundreds and hundreds of years into the Middle Ages. But is that true? It's not. It's not true. Roman Catholicism, the Catholic Church, after the expiration of the millennial kingdom, in which it was very weak. Now it had popes, it had a continuation of this Babylonian religion, but it was not the prominent religion. It was very minor. But after the expiration of the millennial kingdom, in the early phases of the little season, this season of deception, it took on the persona of the past millennial kingdom. It was a spiritual identity theft. And so all of these angelic architecture from the millennial kingdom, these old world buildings, these cathedrals, these palaces, that are all claimed by the Catholic Church, as we see here, the 10 oldest Catholic churches, the 14 most beautiful Catholic churches, all this architecture that you see here, the 10 largest Catholic churches in the world, this was not built by the Catholic Church. This was built during the millennial kingdom. And this is for the worship of Jesus Christ by the saints in the millennial kingdom and those mortals that were believers during this time of peace. This was the millennial reign of Christ, the true millennial reign of Christ. But again, it's hidden in our past because our history was rewritten. We see, again, 1,000-year Holy Roman Empire. Basically, this spirit of Catholicism at the initiation of Satan's little season, this Antichrist spirit returned. After Satan was bound for 1,000 years, Satan was loosed. And so were all the evil spirits, the devils, the unclean spirits, the frogs that we see in the book of Revelation. They were let loose too. And this spirit of Antichrist reemerged, and Catholicism became more prominent and usurped past millennial kingdom history, their cathedrals, their buildings, and everything about it. Again, the unclean spirits reemerged. And so we saw the Holy Roman Empire being this 1,000-year time period in our past during the Middle Ages. We also see the Byzantine Empire, Byzantium. This was truly the millennial kingdom of Christ. It's just, again, usurped and history rewritten. We see the Byzantine Empire, after Rome split, the Eastern Empire known as Byzantium flourishes for 1,000 years. So we see after the fall of Rome, we see the Byzantine Empire emerge for 1,000 years. This is the millennial kingdom of Christ. This is after the judgment of the Roman Empire, the millennial kingdom of Christ being initiated. And so all the Byzantine murals and mosaics of angels, of saints with halos, these glorified saints, these were what they saw during the millennial kingdom at that time. This is after the first resurrection. But the Catholic Church, like they usurped the cathedrals and palaces and history of the millennial kingdom, they also usurped all the things that were going on within it, including the communion of saints, including the Feast of All Saints. These are now Catholic traditions, but these were truly things that were going on during the millennial kingdom, pilgrimages of the saints for the Feast of Tabernacles. Like it says in Zechariah 14, this was going on during the millennial kingdom, this 1,000-year reign. All of this angelic architecture that you see here that the Catholic Church claims as their own today, like St. Peter's Basilica. This was not built in the Middle Ages by Catholics. All of this grand old world architecture. The Milan Cathedral. This is old world buildings of the millennial kingdom and showing what it was like with life in the millennial kingdom, a time of peace when these old world buildings, this angelic architecture could be built, when the wolf dwells with the lamb, and the Catholic Church, the lion. But again, remember, during this 1,000 years, there was a relative time of peace. There was not antichrist spirits within the world, and Jesus was ruling with a rod of iron. Now, there was rebellion, there was sin, there was death. But remember, Zechariah 13:1 and 2, in that day there shall be a fountain open to the house of David and to the inhabitants of Jerusalem for sin and for uncleanness. And it shall come to pass in that day, saith the Lord of hosts, that I will cut off the names of the idols out of the land, and they shall no more be remembered. And also I will cause the prophets and the unclean spirit to pass out of the land. So our history books will tell you that there was these hundreds of years of crusades that went on during the Middle Ages. They will tell you that there's hundreds of years of inquisitions, medieval war against heresy. And they will discuss the rise and expansion of Islam and how the rise of Islam destroyed the Byzantine Empire and all of these wars and crusades and inquisitions. Again, history during the little season of Satan, during this season of deception, has been rewritten, erased, conflated, hidden. Like the fall of Byzantium. The fall of Byzantium was truly the expiration of the millennial kingdom. And at the conclusion of this 1,000-year period, these antichrist spirits reemerged, not only within the Catholic Church like we just saw, but also with Islam. And that is how Islam took over the Byzantine Empire. They took it over because the 1,000-year millennial reign had expired and Satan was loose with these unclean evil spirits. And these antichrist religions regained power and prominence. But again, our history rewrites, erases, conflates real people, places, and events, but stretches it out over hundreds and hundreds of years that didn't exist. But now that after the 1,000-year reign of Christ expired, there is a prophesied little season, a season of deception that we see in Revelation 20, where Satan is loosed. So Satan is coming back up out of his den, out of his hole. And during this time today, children aren't playing on the holes of cockatrice den or on putting their hands on the hole of asp, because Satan is out of the bottomless pit. And we see this throughout our society today. This is Lucifer, and this is homage to Lucifer in New York Harbor. And it's very symbolic of his literal release, his chains being broken, and him being released for a little season. This is the third unclean spirit. This is the serpent's antichrist spirit that has been released and that we see throughout our culture today. There's not a part of our society today that has not been infiltrated by this unclean spirits that come from the mouth of the serpent today, now that he's been released, whether we see it in politics, in our healthcare, in local, state, regional, world governments, education, music industry, entertainment, you name it. We see this antichrist spirit today. And that brings me to the synagogue of Satan. What is the synagogue of Satan in the book of Revelation that we see? Well, it's the compass and square that gives the illusion of a Star of David. But truly, the synagogue of Satan is these Luciferians that hide behind ethnic groups. They're like chameleons. They try to hide who they are. But truly, this is those that give their allegiance to Lucifer, the light bearers, Anno Lucis, the year of light, the age of enlightenment that has been coming about over the last couple of hundred years, the Illuminati. This is truly the Antichrist spirit that we see most prominently today. We see the New World Order and Annuit Coeptus on American currency. This New World Order is part of this Illuminati Luciferian religion that we see during the little season of today. Annuit Coeptus, he approved our undertakings, and this undertaking occurred with the rebellious people who oppose God, the one true God in Jesus Christ, and we're looking forward to the loosing of Satan. And we're in this time. Could this third Antichrist spirit, could what Isaiah was describing, what Daniel was describing, could it be a leopard? You know, we talked about the lion, the wolf, you know, with the lamb being true Christianity, followers of Jesus Christ, from the time of the Roman Empire into the millennial kingdom and into Satan's little season of today. The lamb are the true believers who follow the good news of Jesus Christ. But these antichrist spirits are now back in effect in this little season, and so are these animals' lives that were prolonged for a season and a time. You know, leopard could be representative of this New World Order system that we see today, but they can't change their spots. They try to be this chameleon and hide behind other people's persecutions and whatnot, but they can't change their spots. they're truly the serpent that we see today, this antichrist spirit coming out of the mouth of the serpent. And we see it all over in our culture today. Just like this rebellious flag that we saw at the initiations of somebody's presidential campaign, don't tread on me. We see the symbology in our pharmaceutical and medical industries since the little season began. And we see it in the symbol of our world governments and United Nations here. Revelation 3:9, speaking to the church of Philadelphia, it says, "Behold, I will make them of the synagogue of Satan, which say they are Jews and are not, but do lie. Behold, I will make them to come and worship before thy feet, and to know that I have loved thee." And I think that this did occur at that time, at the second coming of Jesus Christ, and those within the church of Philadelphia were blessed in part of the first resurrection. I think this is also a dual prophecy for our time. And I think that we, in the end of the little season, are that church of brotherly love that is coming together, this Philadelphian church. And during this time of Satan's little season, we need to be the light of the world. We need to let brotherly love continue during this time. And we need to continue to seek truth and give others the good news of Jesus Christ. And that's our role until the end of the little season comes about. And when it does, I think the initiation of it will be the revealing of the camp of the saints and beloved city. And so pray always, watch and pray always, and we'll do another video soon. God bless.